I promised earlier we would come back around to the union statement, and here we are. The union merges data from two different tables together. Now, if you just sat through the section on joins, you might be thinking, well, isn't that what join does? Well, yes, but the output is very different. If we look here on a join, I'm joining two tables, A and B. The output is going to be the columns from both tables combined on a single row. So here you can see I have A.col1, A.col2, A.col3. Then on the same row, I have columns 1, 2, and 3 from table B. Let's contrast that with a union. In a union, each row has data from one of the two tables. On the first row, I have row, and then I have the data from table A, A.col1, A.col2, A.col3. And then the second row, I have the data from table B, row B.col1, col2, B.col3. When the same column name exists in both tables, union will put that data in that column. So you can see all data from col1 goes into the same column because the name is the same for both A and B. If I have a column that only exists in one of the tables, it will be included. If you look toward the end, you'll see A.col4, but on rows that come from table B, which is missing the col4, that entry will just be empty. Likewise, my B table has a col5, which table A lacks, so on rows from table A, that column will just be empty. The very simplest method to do a union is to just have the first table, update summary in this example, followed by a pipe into the union command, and then we have the second table update. Below you can see I've already run this query. However, it doesn't become immediately apparent which rows came from which table. Union helps us with that by including an optional parameter called WithSource. After my union, I just say WithSource, and then I give it something that's going to be the column name in my output. Below, you can see I now have source table, and then at first I have update summary. I'm going to come down here to my results, and we'll go all the way to the last page, and you can see that source table has now changed to update. Here, I've just said combine all of the columns from both tables. We can actually get much more selective. Here, I'm saying my first query, update summary, I'm piping that into a project, and I'm selecting a handful of column names. Note that because I'm actually making this a full-blown query and not just tables, I have to wrap it all in parentheses. I then come down in my query to the union, and I have a second query into my update table. Note too that it is in parentheses, and when I run this, you can see the results below. I want you to note something before we look at the results. My first query has a net runtime version column. The second query lacks this net runtime version, but includes an update state column. So now if I come down here to the output, you can see my source table is no longer a nice pretty name, but just union arg0. That just means arg0 is the first query we passed in. If I scroll all the way to the right, you'll see we have all these columns that are the same. Here is the net runtime version from the first query. But if you look all the way to the right, you'll see update state is empty. That's because the first query did not return an update state column. If I come all the way here to the end, you can see now I have my update state populated with installed. My net runtime version is empty. That's because, if I come all the way over here, you can see my source table is now union arg1. Arg1 will be the second query passed in, which is coming from my update table. We can also call union by having the union command come first. Here I have union, I have my WithSource, I then have my update summary query in parentheses, I then have a comma, and I have my second query. And looking below, you can see I get the same output. If I scroll down a little more, you can see that I can actually keep unioning multiple tables together. Here, I'm going to union my original update summary query, comma, my next update query, and finally, comma, and another query into perf. You have to be careful with this because queries like this can take a long time to run. The more tables you union together, the longer it takes. As a matter of fact, this takes quite a while to execute, so I'm not going to run it right now, but just understand you could be waiting a while once you start getting so many unions together. In practice, our queries become much more readable if we'll use the let statement. So here I've got a variable comp name. I then fall into my first let, which is the query into my update summary table. I then have a second let, which is the query into my update table. Finally, I union them together, and you can see the union is much more readable. Here is the output, which again is what you've seen in the previous queries. However, the code was much more readable. Now, there's actually two different kinds of unions. By default, if I just say union, and I just have two tables, not queries, but tables, then the union is going to include only the columns that common to both, because the default type of query is a inner. If I want this to have all of the columns from both tables, I need to say kind equals outer. It's another one of those kind hints. And so you can see down here at the bottom, there's my update summary, and we have all the different columns that are out here, many of these that are only applicable to my update summary table. If I scroll down here to the last page, we're going to see I have those columns are empty for the update table, but I have some columns that are included for the update table. So quite a mix here, and this is a way that you can get all columns from both tables. I can further extend my results out of a union. Here I've got the same query as before. I've got my computer name, I've got my lets for the two different queries, and then I've defined that same function that I did earlier. I did modify its structure a little bit just to demonstrate that you could lay it out differently. I mentioned that the squiggly braces could be broken out across multiple lines, for example, and I did that here just to show you. After my union, I now pipe it into my extend, and I include a call to this function. I take my date, diff, and days function, pass in time generated, and return that in a new column, days since start of year. In my output, I can scroll all the way to the right, and there's my days since start of year. Now I just did this with the function call. The output to union can be piped into any other KQL command you want. I could do more filtering using wheres. I could do projects. I can do anything that I would do normally with a query.